Hey guys, it's Darwin, and I just got back from spending 17 days up in the Alaskan wilderness doing a 300 plus mile traverse through the Brooks Range, and I had some gear fail on me. I mean, some pretty big failures. Not to mention there's some gear that I took that if I was gonna go do it again, I would totally leave at home. So today I wanna talk about some of these gear failures, some of the stuff I would have left at home, and what I would have taken instead. And then at the end of this video, I actually want to give a few honorable mentions to some gear that far exceeded my expectations and worked out great while I was up in Alaska. All right, to jump into it, right out of the gate, a pretty big gear failure. It was actually my biggest one that I had, was my pair of Durston Iceline carbon trekking poles. So I picked these poles up a few months back, and the reason I picked them up is because they were light, they were carbon, they were super sturdy, and what I really liked about them is they separated and broke down small. So for me, I wanted something that I could trim weight back a little bit because I was carrying so much extra weight, but also something that I could easily break apart and store in my Packraft. So I only had a couple days on these before I took them out on the trail, but on day 2, I had a pretty massive failure with these poles. The first 2 days we were actually pack rafting, and on half of the second day, we broke our pack rafting gear down and we transitioned into backpacking. We only had about 4 miles to go for that day. Well, about halfway through that, we had to break everything down and put pack rafts together again to get across a river. And when we got done with that section, I went to put my poles back together, and the little mechanism, this button that actually makes them snap back together, wouldn't snap back, and the pole would not actually stay in there. So as you can hear it, it's supposed to stay there and then you can't pull them apart. Well, that button got stuck, and I figured it just had dirt, sand, something like that inside. So I tried to clean it out. I used water. I kind of blew in the button a bit, and it never would quite spring back. So it's got like a little spring in here. So from there forward, I would be randomly hiking. I would try to get this in here. I would wiggle it, try to get it to stay. The button would never completely come up, and I'd be hiking and the poles would just kind of separate. This would get stuck in the mud. I would go to lift my pole and it would just kind of pop open like that. So that was a pretty big gear failure right out of the gate. Then on that same pole, which I don't have right now, and I'll explain why here in a minute, I was hiking, and without realizing it, I actually sheared off the end of the carbon pole. So not at the tip, it actually sheared off right about here. I was hiking through some rocks and a river. I guess it got stuck between some rocks and it broke off. Now, yes, these are carbon poles. However, I've been hiking with carbon poles for years, and I have had this happen one other time with a pair of carbon poles out on the Continental Divide Trail. But that pair of poles had close to 3,000 miles on them. These had about 5 days total on them. So not only did the button fail, then I sheared it off. Well, for the next 4 days, I was basically hiking with one complete pole and the other one that had a stump that consistently separated. So it was basically a worthless pole, but I used it anyways. Well, on about day 7, we were going through a pretty hard time, a hard section. It was super hot. We were starting to get some heat exhaustion, and I had to sit down for a while. I was feeling really bad. I got up to take off hiking. I put my pole down. It separated, and I got really upset, and I threw the pole. Like an idiot, I threw my pole because I was mad. And the pole now lives somewhere in the Alaskan wilderness. So the bushes out there are very thick. There's a lot of brush, and I looked for it for about 30 minutes and couldn't find the pole. When I went to go look for the pole, it actually created another gear failure that I'll talk about here in a minute. But that's why I only have one pole left, and why I only had one pole for the last 9-10 days of the trip. So a pretty big gear failure. Then this pole failed as well. So on the third to last day of the trip, we were traversing down a pretty rocky section, really shaly, and I was using my one pole to make sure I wasn't falling forward as a brake, and some of the rocks slipped out under me. I fell forward and I used the pole to kind of grab myself. And when I did that, I actually bent the pole. Yes, I bent a pair of carbon trekking poles. How do you bend a carbon trekking pole? Well, that little bitty insert that goes into that button that I was talking about, that's actually what bent. So it's a little aluminum nipple. If you look at it, I don't know if you can see that, it's bent to one side. And apparently that's a pretty common failure with these poles. A lot of people have actually snapped these off while hiking. Actually, when I was doing a trip with Dan Durston up in Canada, he fell over on his skis and actually snapped one of these off. So, going forward, I really wanted to love these poles. They're super light. When they're sturdy, they're super sturdy. I love how they break down, but I would never, ever trust this pole again out in the backcountry, actually doing hardcore hiking, ever trust these poles. So if I was going to do it again, I would have left those at home and taken something like my Black Diamond carbon cork poles. I've had these poles since 2016. They have a stupid amount of miles on them, a bunch of the PCT, the Arizona Trail, some stuff overseas, super reliable, have never failed me. Or I would use something like this carbon pole, which is made by Diorite. It used to be the Canuck carbon trekking pole. They rebranded it as Diorite. Again, awesome. I've had one fail on me one time, and that was after almost 3,000 miles of some pretty hardcore hiking. So much more dependable. So unfortunately, the Durston Iceline poles were a pretty big failure for me. So sitting here editing this video, I got thinking about a piece of gear that never failed me when I was up in Alaska, and I'm super glad that I didn't leave it home, and that's today's video sponsor, onX Backcountry. So I used onX Backcountry, the desktop version, to completely map out and route my entire trip up in Alaska, and then me and the crew all used the onX mobile app with offline maps while we were out in the field. Not only to navigate our way through the bush and up on ridge lines, but also when we were on the river doing pack rafting. So onX Backcountry became a super powerful and crazy invaluable tool in our gear kit. So if you guys have been wanting to step up your backcountry navigation game and help support my channel, right now you can get a premium membership to onX for only $1 for 3 months. Or you can get what I use, which is the Elite membership, for only $3 for 3 months. It's a stupid good deal, and honestly, I'm not sure how long it lasts, but I'll leave a link down below so you guys can check it out for yourself. I can't thank onX enough for supporting my trip up in Alaska, supporting me and the channel. Now, let's get back to the video. All right, the next thing is something that I wish that I would have left at home and taking something completely different, and that is my Sawyer Picaridin lotion. Now, I've been using this bug lotion for years, and it works great against mosquitoes. However, something else I've been doing for years is only hiking in shorts, and a lot of times I roll my sleeves up. Well, on this trip, I was hiking in long pants, long sleeves, and a hood about 99% of the time. So the only place I could really apply lotion was on the top of my hands and on my face, and that's if I wasn't wearing a bug net. So using something like lotion was kind of a stupid call on my part. I guess I just didn't think about it. I've been using this stuff for years, and out of all the days that we were out there, we had a lot of mosquitoes. I think I used one packet of this. Instead, I wish I would have left this at home and actually taken the Sawyer Picaridin spray. So they make it in a couple different versions, spray, lotion. I don't know why I thought this was going to be a good idea. I just didn't think about it. Luckily, the other two guys I was hiking with had the Picaridin spray, so I was able to mooch off of it, use it quite a bit, and it worked out great against mosquitoes. Not to mention I treated all my clothes with permethrin, my pants, my shirt, so that worked out great. But yeah, it was just a dumb call on my part. I don't know why I didn't think about it. I'm sure there was even some comments on the video I made about bug spray and bug lotion where I said I was going to take this, and people brought that up. I just didn't think about it. So that was kind of a dumb move on my part. I wish I wouldn't have brought the Picaridin lotion, and instead I wish I would have brought the Picaridin spray. All right, the next big gear failure was actually my hiking shoes. So a couple years ago, I decided to finally ditch the old Ultra Lone Peaks that I'd been wearing for years, and I went to a shoe called the Topo Pursuit. absolutely love that shoe. Have been able to put tons of miles on it, have never had blisters with them, no ankle or Achilles problems, no knee problems, anything. They've been awesome shoes. Well, about a year ago, Topo updated the shoe, as shoe companies for some reason do, and redesigned it a little bit and put out the Pursuit 2. I wasn't 100% happy with this shoe. I used it quite a bit last year and it just didn't hold up as much. I didn't like some of the changes that they made, but I'm trying to milk the last couple of pairs that I have of the Pursuit 1s because I can't get any more pairs. So I decided to buy a brand new pair of the Pursuit 2s for Alaska because I knew that I was going to shred a pair of shoes in that environment. Well, they ended up giving me a ton of problems. What it came down to is we were hiking through a lot of what they call Alaskan tundra or tussock fields. So they're these big, like bulbous grass things that you're constantly walking and your feet are doing this. Miles and miles and miles of that every single day. So that didn't help. But what I started noticing is on both of the shoes, I was starting to get a bad rubbing sensation on my Achilles tendon right here at this heel cup. And on my right side, on about day 7, it started hurting very bad. Every time that I would take a step, I would feel this rub on my Achilles tendon that would just be super, super painful. So I actually decided to alter the shoe, and on my right side, I actually cut off the top of it. So I actually cut out the fabric, the foam, and then there was a little bitty kind of hard plastic piece back here, which is what I actually think was too hard rubbing against my Achilles for days. Again, the tussocks and the terrain didn't help, but after taking this part out, it relieved it a little bit. But what ended up happening is I actually got Achilles tendonitis in both of my Achilles tendons. So once I cut that out, it was kind of too late. It had already set in, and then it started happening on my left side. Now, I never actually cut it out on the left side. I just kind of dealt with it for 7 to 8 days, and it was super painful the entire time I was hiking. And I know it's the shoes because every time that I would take off the pair of shoes, walk around camp barefoot, it wouldn't bother me at all. As soon as I put the shoes on, it would start hurting immensely. So, yeah, pretty big gear failure for me that it created quite a big injury, and I'm still dealing with it. It still hurts. Again, if I'm hiking in sandals or I put on another pair of shoes, it doesn't hurt at all. But as soon as I put these on, my Achilles starts screaming. Hopefully I can get those healed up before my next trip. But the Topo Pursuit 2 was a pretty big failure for me. Going forward, I'm going to use my Pursuit 1s that I know that work for me. And when those die, I guess I'm going to either take a chance on the Pursuit 3s if they put those out or swap to something else. Topo Pursuit 2 was a pretty big failure for me on this trip. The next piece of gear that I wish that I would have left at home, not taken at all, and it actually ended up turning into a gear failure, was my Tenkara rod fishing pole. So for this trip, I decided because I was going to be on so much water, I would have a little fun, do something different, and I took a Tenkara fishing pole along with a tackle kit that had flies, tippet, a little knife in it, just to do something different. Well, out of all 17 days that I was out there were only 2 days that were actually suitable for fishing with a Tenkara rod. When you're on rivers, they're just too deep. They're moving too fast to be able to use something like a Tenkara rod. You need a more traditional fishing pole. Really, you want like a real shallow, nice mountain stream that you can see things like trout and stuff in. And out of all 17 days, there were only 2 days that we had access to those types of streams. And not to mention, I didn't catch anything. I used it for 2 days, never caught a fish. Maybe that just makes me a bad fisherman. My buddy did catch some fish, but in the grand scheme of things, I wish I would have just left this at home. You know, it's not a lot of weight to take this and to take this. It didn't take up a ton of room, but I don't know. It's just one of those things that I was carrying it just to carry it. And the 2 days that I got to fish really wasn't worth the time. On top of that, on the last day that I was able to use this, I was fishing right at camp. Didn't catch a single damn thing. I went to sit down. I put the pole back together. So sometimes these poles get stuck because it's telescoping. And when you put it back together, you kind of have to push like that, each section down. I actually snapped the very tip of the pole off. So the carbon little pole actually snapped right at the end. So even if I wanted to fish for a third day, I couldn't because I broke the pole. The good thing is I think that you can buy replaceable sections of this, so I will be able to replace this by buying a section from Tenkara Rod. But in the grand scheme of things, it was just kind of a worthless piece of gear for me. It's one of those things that it sounded like a good idea, but if I had to do it again, I would definitely leave it at home. The next piece of gear is sort of a failure. It's more of a misplaced piece of gear, and that is my GoPro. So for this hike, not only did I carry my regular camera to get some shots, but I also carried a GoPro because we were doing a lot of rafting. I wanted to be able to get some type of drone-y shots, putting it on the end of my trekking pole, and I wanted to vlog a lot. So I took an action camera on this trip. Well, remember when I said that I got upset and I threw my trekking pole into the bush? Well, when I did that, I noticed, or I realized that I had done something stupid. I took my backpack off and my GoPro was sitting in my side pocket of my pack so I could easily grab it and take a shot with it. And I took my pack off and I threw it down so I could go search for the trekking pole. And when I did that, my GoPro must have popped out of the side pocket, got lost somewhere in the bushes, and I didn't realize it until about a mile after we hiked away from that spot. We stopped to take a break and I realized that my GoPro was gone. So I left my gear there and me and a buddy hiked all the way back. We completely retraced our steps, even used a track, and I couldn't find it. We looked for it for about an hour. The bushes out there are so thick, it's like finding a needle in a haystack. So my GoPro, along with my first 7 days of footage, things from the river of pack rafting, vloggy type stuff, some kind of drone type shots I was taking, is all gone. It's all on that card on the GoPro. Now, I actually had to buy a new one when I got back because I'm about to take off on another trip in 2 weeks and I need this. So I had to buy another one, but somewhere in the Alaskan wilderness, really kind of in the same spot, there's a broken trekking pole and my GoPro with all of my 7 days of footage on there. So if you dare to go out into the Alaskan wilderness, it's there for the taking. So the last piece of gear that I would have left at home and brought something completely different is something that I actually stupidly swapped out at the very last minute when I was up in Fairbanks, Alaska. So for this trip, I wanted to try a new water filter system, and Sawyer recently released not only some new bags with all of their filters, so these thicker bags, unlike the old crappy plastic bags that are made by Canuck, but they also released a new version of the Sawyer Mini 2. They improved the flow rate of the filter and it is now dual threaded. So you have a thread on both sides just like the regular Sawyer. So I decided to give it a try. And my original plan was to take this and my Canuck Vesica bottle. It's a 1 liter collapsible bottle that has kind of a hard top and a hard bottom. And Sawyer makes a version of this that they do include with their filters. Well, this was my original idea for my filter system. And at the very last minute, I decided to swap out this bag for the smaller 750 Sawyer pouch. So, did the gear fail? Not at all. The bag was totally fine. It held up great. The filter far exceeded my expectations, and I actually really love this. I'll talk about it here in a second. But I wish that I would have just stuck with my 1 liter Vesica bottle. The reason is while I was out there, I was using this 1 liter bottle here called the Through bottle. And when I was at camp and I went to go fill up water, I would fill this up, and obviously 750 milliliters is not gonna fill up 1 liter bottle, so I would have to go back and make multiple trips. Also, there were some sections where it was a little harder to collect water in like these little puddles with this, while we were up on some high ridges. And what we found was this kind of harder top bottle worked really well as like a cup for getting water out of smaller holes. Both the guys I was hiking with had one of these, and then again at the last minute, I decided to use one of these. In the grand scheme of things, I wish I would have stuck with my 1 liter Vesica bottle, or at least gotten the new Sawyer one. So kind of a, if I was gonna do it again, I would leave this thing at home. Again, it was great, it worked out awesome. If I was doing smaller trips, I might use this, but this I think is the better bottle for filling up a bottle and just having more water storage. Speaking of that, that's really all of the gear that failed on me and that I would totally swap out and use something different. So I want to talk about some of the gear that far exceeded my expectations, and one of those pieces of gear was the new Sawyer Mini. The last time I used a Sawyer Mini was back in like 2016, and they always clogged up, especially with silty water. They never had a good flow rate, and I decided to stop using them. I hadn't used one since. Well, Sawyer put out a dual threaded version that they apparently made the flow rate better, and I decided to give it a try, and I was pleasantly surprised by this thing. One of the things I actually really like that they did is they made it dual threaded, so it has this little white cap, but what you can do is you can take this cap off, you can put this on your water bottle, and then it's got this little like nipple here, and there's that one. You can actually connect that, thread your bottle on, and you can use your water bottle to back flush the filter. Super easy. So I was able to back flush this a few times in the field. It never clogged up on me. It did super well, even in crazy silty river water. So the Sawyer Mini worked out fantastic. I was very pleasantly surprised at this. The other honorable mentions that I want to kind of put out there are things that a lot of people question, like my tent. I ended up using a Zpacks Altiplex trekking pole tent, and I know there's a lot of people that were thinking that I would need something more like a freestanding tent out there because of the wind, the rain, the environment, and my trekking pole tent worked out phenomenal. I've had years on the Altiplex. I've been able to set it up in the weirdest conditions, and it performed great out in the Alaskan wilderness, against the rain, against the wind. There was never a time where I couldn't set that tent up. So that worked out great. The new backpack that I designed, the 70-liter pack that I took over there, was fantastic, super comfortable. I think the most weight I had in it was just over 60 pounds, and it carried comfortably like a champ. So I was super excited about that. No failures with that pack, so yay. My cook system, my little alcohol stove, my super simple setup of this little Toaks siphon alcohol stove, my windscreen and stand, and my 8-ounce bottle of fuel. All was great. The windscreen was great from the wind. This was super efficient. The stand worked out great, and I was able to get a boil on 1/2 ounce of alcohol. There was actually some days I was only using 1/4 ounce just to make my coffee because it's all I needed. So 8 ounces was more than enough for the big stretches that I had. For 8 days, I was able to use 1 ounce a day, and that was enough for doing everything that I needed to do. And then the last piece of gear that a lot of people kind of scoffed at and questioned was my food storage, my Grizzly Protection food storage, which was the Atotech Grizzly bag. Worked out fantastic. It held all of my food. I was able to tie my stuff up every night. There's a lot of people that were kind of concerned that there wasn't going to be any trees. There was a ton of trees up in Alaska. And every night I was able to tie it to a tree, a bush, some sort of a root system or something. On top of that, we never saw a bear. In 17 days, I never saw a grizzly bear. Go figure. So this worked out fantastic, and I would definitely use this again for any grizzly protection. All the guys that I went with were using one of these, and we were all very pleasantly surprised on this bag. All right, guys, that's it. That's all the gear that failed on me. That's all the gear that I would definitely swap out if I was going to do it again, and some of the gear that worked out fantastic while I was up there. So speaking of that, what's some gear that's recently failed on you out in the field? What's some gear that you wish that you would have left at home when you took it out on the trail and thought it was going to be a good idea? Like my fishing pole. Leave me something down below and let me know your thoughts. Guys, I hope you're doing well. I hope you're taking care of yourselves. I hope you're taking care of each other. I love you, and as always, thanks for watching.